All right, welcome into SEC Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller and Jackson Johnson here on a Sunday night. A little bit of a different recording time for us because we felt like we had to react to the first round of the college football playoff, which is now in the rearview mirror. We have two SEC teams of a potential three since we did have an SEC on SEC matchup. So was not a perfect weekend for the SEC by any means. Obviously, Texas A&M did not hold up their end of the bargain to keep the league as locked in as it possibly could have been for the playoff. But otherwise, you get Alabama going on the road and avenging that loss to the Sooners earlier in the season. They get the win in Norman and kind of a crazy comeback game. Ole Miss handled business against Tulane just like pretty much everybody expected them to. And as we mentioned, Texas A&M falls in one of the ugliest, most disgusting football games any of us have ever seen at home to Miami. We're going to talk about all those games tonight and just give our thoughts on what we saw in those matchups, and then maybe just a quick look at each of those teams, maybe what's next, whether it be their next playoff matchup or if they're going to the offseason, what's the early outlook for those teams. But Jackson, hey, how are you doing on this Sunday evening? You're tied to get a big win back on Friday night.
Oh, man, that was a wild ride, especially in the second quarter, and I'm sure we'll break that down a little bit, but it was like a little note that I've got from Oklahoma's loss on Friday night. It's the second most blown lead in the history of CFP playoffs. Guess what the first one was? The 2018 Rose Bowl.
Also Oklahoma. Also 17 points.
And Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit were there calling that one.
That Rose Bowl was just an all-time great college football game, like one of the craziest games ever. But yeah, OU drops to 0-5 all-time in the college football playoff. It has not been great for the Sooners. They found themselves getting into the postseason quite a bit here for the playoff, but in terms of getting the wins, that continues to evade them. Obviously, Alabama, though, a team that's plenty used to winning in the playoff, and now Kalen DeBoer becomes, I think, the first coach with a playoff win at multiple schools now. After getting a win in a game that, as you just kind of alluded to, they were down 17-0. And it really looked like OU might blow them out of the building for a stretch there. And I think OU heard all the talk about how the last game was fluky and kind of took it and said, oh, you're going to call that a fluke? We're going to go out and be as dominant as possible. But obviously you talk about that second quarter, things flip. I'll give you the first word here since it's your team. What are your big takeaways? What were your big thoughts throughout this game?
Well, the turning point of it was that fourth down touchdown, that first touchdown, right? I mean, because like in the first quarter, it looked like we forgot to tie our shoes on that one, But then second quarter, we're just getting things rolling. I mean, Lottie Brooks, huge playmaker throughout Friday night. And just looking at the second quarter, we were trailing 17-7, fourth down, muff punt by Oklahoma. And then you see that pick six, that 50-yard pick six for Xavier Brown. Humongous turning point for the Crimson Tide. And then when you're tied at 17-17 apiece in the third quarter, Cole Avs returning a punt. But then there's that late hit, right? That's what leads up to, that touchdown. Where we're scoring 27 unanswered points. That was a huge win. And as a matter of fact, wind was a huge factor in this game because it was windy outside in Norman, Oklahoma. They said it was going to be a turning point for someone. And as I said throughout on SEC at the Voice of College Football and Alabama at the Voice of College Football, defense was going to be a key to victory for somebody. And it was a key to victory for the Alabama Crimson Tide on Friday night. Kind of like how defense was a key to victory for Oklahoma on November 15th, 2025. On December 19th, 2025, defense was a key turning point for the Alabama Crimson Tide over the Oklahoma Sooners. And kind of like how Georgia has washed away the notion that Alabama is their kryptonite, Alabama has officially washed away the notion that Oklahoma is their kryptonite.
You bring up a good point. You do talk about the defense. Obviously, the Tide get 5 sacks in this game, and that a lot of those coming after those first couple of drives. That was a big part of this turning point was some of the defensive adjustments from Alabama. But you left out, I thought, what was a pretty key play in that turnaround, and just kind of to lead up to it. My early thoughts. I thought, look, OU could not have started this game better. I know that's kind of obvious, but look, Ben Arbor was calling a great game early. OU's offensive coordinator, they were having success in the quarterback run game. And look, Mateer was not playing perfect, but he would just it was like every other throw, he would get a connection. Now, some of that was Deion Burks bailing him out a couple times with some very impressive catches, including one of the craziest catches that we've seen on that toe tap on the sidelines. But Mateer was doing just enough to kind of keep that offense moving, and they were able to go down and put those scoring drives together there early in the game. And then on the other side of the ball, we saw a lot of what I think we kind of expected coming in from an Alabama standpoint going up against the OU defense that, I kind of talked about going into this. Brent Venables is the DC I don't want to face if he has zero worry that my opponent being able to run the football. And you saw, because if he knows he doesn't have to fear that run game, he's going to really crank up the pass rush. He's going to really do a great job of disguising things and really messing with the opposing offensive line and the opposing quarterback. And that's exactly what happened. Ty Simpson was rattled early in this game. He did not look settled in the pocket whatsoever. He was off target on his throws. It got to a point where even when the pressure wasn't there, he was rushed and not feeling comfortable. And, I think a play before the touchdown or 2 plays before they finally get that touchdown, he had a wide open throw that he missed that would have been a walk-in touchdown. They're down deep in OU territory. So he had to really settle in. But once he did, it really started to flip. And that scoring drive that Alabama was able to put together was huge. They get the big completion on third down to Brooks. That was sort of their first big play of the game. Cuevas gets a big reception. And then, again, you talk about the fourth down and the touchdown pass to Brooks, who, like you said, had a massive game. He really stepped up in this one for Alabama. Choosing to go for that fourth down was huge. That was momentum. But the play that I was alluding to that you kind of forgot about, or you didn't, I don't know if you forgot, you just didn't mention it.
Yeah.
That third down play, OU, they quickly, they respond to get a first down, and they got 3rd and 3 at the Oklahoma 47. So they're near midfield.
Yeah.
And Bama sends a corner blitz, or it was a DB coming off the edge, completely left free. Should have been a sack. Mateer makes a crazy play to avoid the sack. He could have scrambled for a first, but he has Xavier Robinson wide open downfield. And he puts out a perfect pass that if it's caught, it's at least a big gain, if not a touchdown. Robinson might have got that and walked into the end zone. And Robinson short arms it and doesn't bring it in.
Oh, yeah.
And, there was should Mateer have run? I don't know. I mean, it was his running back who was downfield, so maybe you don't trust him. But at the same time, man, you got a guy wide open. It's hard to pass that up and not take that shot. And he threw a perfect pass. But it falls incomplete. OU has to punt, and that's where that muff punt happens. Well, not the muff punt, the muff snap, and then the block. And as you mentioned, look, OU's defense held there. They got a big sack to hold to a field goal, but then Bama comes right back out, and it's the pick six. And even on the pick six, I know there was miscommunication there between Mateer and his receiver. He was trying to signal beforehand, and he was telling him he needed to sit it down. Even with the miscommunication, man, it's a risky throw because if you see the corner is going to be sitting there, I wouldn't be throwing right into that. So that was just such a big thing from a momentum standpoint. And the rest of the game, Bama really took over. I think Ty Simpson got locked in, and he started getting more accurate. He looked more like the player that we saw the first half of the season when he was a legitimate Heisman candidate. And being talked about as a first-round pick in the upcoming draft, he looked like that player. Daniel Hill had some nice runs to give Bama a little bit of something in the run game. I think he's got to be RB1 moving forward at this point ahead of Jam Miller. Miller just did not have a great game there.
No.
And we talked about this earlier, the defense, Kane Womack, something I think he's done a great job of is making adjustments over the course of the season where it feels like a lot of deep opposing offenses will come out in their opening drive or a couple drives. They'll be able to move the ball down the field, have some success, put points on the board. And you saw that in this one. But once they kind of saw we can't sit back against Mateer and we're going to have to send pressure, and they started sending pressure, they couldn't handle it. And it gave them a lot of problems, as we mentioned, 5 sacks in this game. And OU did respond. They had a nice touchdown drive later, a big play to Deion Burks that, kind of got him back in it there at the start of the fourth quarter. But really, from that touchdown pass in the second quarter on fourth down on, Bama kind of took control of the game and looked more like the better team in a lot of ways.
They did, yeah. They really did. I mean, like, really stepped up the game. And, there were 5 sats on Mateer Friday night. 5 sats. That was huge for the defense right there.
And the other thing, because it is funny talking about Bama did look like the better team, and they definitely did. Once the script flipped, you saw Bama look like the better football team. But in some ways, this is almost the inverse of the first game. Because the first game, Bama puts up over 400 yards, holds OU to like 200 something. Like the Sooners were not moving the football whatsoever. But what was the difference? It was 3 turnovers. It was a missed field goal. You look at this game, OU outgained Alabama. It wasn't as wide a margin as the first game, but they had 102 more yards, 362 to 260. OU went 7 of 18 on third down, which is perfectly fine. They didn't really run the football that effectively outside of Mateer's legs early, but OU was able to move the football some in this game and was moving it probably more consistently than Bama was. But you have the pick six. You have the block punt that sets up a short field for Alabama. You also have 2 missed field goals, but from a kicker who hadn't missed since early in the season. And I know the second missed field goal, at that point, the game was kind of decided. But the first one, if he makes that, if OU gets one stop, they're down a touchdown. They have a chance to go tie the game. So things like the plays that went against Alabama the first time these teams faced went against Oklahoma this time, and it ends up being the difference.
It does. No doubt about that. I mean, no doubt about it.
So looking ahead for Alabama, they're going to go to the Rose Bowl, and they're going to take on Indiana. And you get to see, Kurt Cignetti, a former Alabama assistant back from the Saban days, early Saban days, that is, leading that Hoosier program, number 1 in the country, has been absolutely undefeated, been absolutely dominant all season. What are your early thoughts on that matchup? Obviously, we'll have plenty of time to really get into it.
It's going to be the first time ever in school history that Alabama and Indiana play each other in college football. But here's a little nugget for you, ladies and gentlemen. When it gets to January 1st, 2026, Alabama will be playing on the day of the 100th anniversary of the game that changed the South on New Year's Day of 1926 between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Washington Huskies, where the Crimson Tide won 20-19. There again, Alabama trailing 12-0. They scored 20 unanswered points, and Washington lost because NCAA really didn't think to invent 2-point conversions until 1958.
Interesting nugget. We can always count on Jackson for the history lesson here, which I enjoy. I do enjoy the college ball history. Jackson did change hats. We do have that note. He took off the Santa hat and
it was getting a little. You know what? I'll change it into the Bama hat.
If you had been in Oxford, you could have helped set a Guinness World Record for most Santa hats in one place. That was hang a banner, Ole Miss. No, that's obviously the history. Any thoughts facing this Indiana team?
We are going to have to figure out how to really stop that Indiana secondary because, apparently, Indiana's weakness has been their secondary. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We need to put a ton of pressure on Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner, because that is going to be key to victory. We cannot do what we did against Oklahoma on Friday night in the first quarter, because if we're trailing 17-0 going into the second quarter, we're in trouble with this Indiana team. That I know for sure.
Well, I think that secondary is a strength for IU. I mean, it's been a really good group. D'Angelo Pound sort of leading the way with on the back end. That Indiana defense, man, it's been dominant all season. And that's a group that we talk about OU's dominance. And look, OU has probably gone up against more high-profile offenses than Indiana has to this point. But they did a great job shutting down Ohio State. They did a great job shutting down Oregon. They've seen high-powered teams. It's a really good Indiana defense top to bottom. They got a great pass rush. And I do worry about Bama handling that. And look, I'll say this for Alabama. Their offensive line, I think, did step up in this game against OU. Still, four sacks for the Sooners defense. OU was able to get pressure. But as the game went along, Bama did a better job of handling some of what OU was throwing at them. It wasn't the same as early in the game. There was a lot of pressure, but I think they handled some of that more as the game went along. They're going to have to handle that. And look, it's been the story with Alabama all year. You can't count on this team to be able to run the football. And, even with what we've seen out of Daniel Hill, which, again, really nice game for him sort of stepping in. You have to just, at this point, Alabama, it comes down to what Ty Simpson's able to do with his arm, which obviously puts pressure on your offensive line in terms of stepping up, puts pressure on Simpson to get rid of the football and find his guys. But look, it's a talented group of receivers. Indiana did face a talented group of receivers in Ohio State. And look, the Buckeyes didn't have a bad day throwing the football. In fact, Julian Sayin had a pretty solid day, 22 of 30 for 264 with a touchdown and a pick. So you can find some success throwing the football, but again, it's a very talented group on the back end and a good pass rush. Bama's going to have to play as good as they've played offensively, I think, in this game. And I think Bama's defense, you trust them to step up, but it's going to be a challenge against Indiana for sure. But look, is Indiana ready for the moment, right? I don't hold last year's playoff against them. That was a different Hoosiers team. This one's a lot more talented, a lot better top to bottom, but they're going to the Rose Bowl for the first time since, I believe, 1963. So what is that scene going to be like? What is that environment going to be like for them? How are they going to step in and handle that? That'll certainly be interesting to watch, but I think that's going to be another really great battle and look forward to seeing that one come New Year's Day. Obviously, we'll have more thoughts on that matchup in the coming weeks. A game that did not go well for the SEC. Texas A&M loses at home 10-3 to Miami. And as the real MVP points out, there's a lot of people calling the SEC overrated because Texas A&M lost to Miami. Thoughts? I haven't seen a lot of those conversations. I feel like a lot of the playoff convo is on another topic that I guess will come up when we talk about Ole Miss versus Tulane. But I think with Texas A&M specifically, if you were to point out a flaw with that team, the fact that they had not been truly challenged throughout the entirety of the season up until the Texas game really probably didn't reflect well on their ability to step into the playoffs against a really talented Miami team and perform well. And I know Miami's one of those programs that's kind of become the butt of jokes because Mario Cristobal, people have fair opinions on him as a head coach, and certainly he gets in his own way with the clock management and some of the stuff they'll do on offense. But, hey, man, they got a ton of talent, and they were really good down the stretch. And they came out ready to go in this game, which actually that's probably not the best way to say it, but neither of these teams look particularly good early.
11
points.
Points. Like, my God. Like, I think it was more than that, but still, it's like, good God. That was such a cluster.
You talk about wind in the Oklahoma game. The wind was whipping. And in this one, Miami goes 1 of 4 kicking. And there was a couple of those field goals where you could see, like, he had it aimed dead center, and then the wind takes it and just whips it off away. Jackson, this was a tough watch.
Oh, man. It was like, I warned everybody that Miami would do well. I mean, they didn't exactly do awesome either, but I warned everybody they would pull it out when the spotlight's on them. They do that for some reason. For some reason, they pull that every week of the season. When the spotlight is all on Miami, they thrive. They win.
Miami is interesting. It feels like the losses and the falling flat on their face happens when no one is paying attention. And it's like they're playing Virginia Tech on a random week late in the season. I know they beat Virginia Tech this year, but they'll take a loss like that or when it's not the stakes. But it feels like the big games, the big spotlight games, the U has stepped up. Look, I went into this game and I thought whichever quarterback could excel as in the drop back pass game, I thought would be who would win. And my basis for that was I kind of looked at both of these teams and sort of felt like the defensive fronts are going to be able to hold their own. I don't think either team's going to be able to run the football all that well. I think it's going to have to come down to which quarterbacks are able to make plays. Both pass rushes can be successful, so which quarterback can handle that better in terms of just stepping up and delivering. And I thought that would kind of be what determined this outcome. And it really wasn't because both quarterbacks sucked as drop back passers. It was not a good day for Carson Beck. He high completion percentage, goes 14 of 20, but for 103 yards, did have he technically threw a touchdown. It was a touch pass. It was not a real touchdown pass to Malachi Tony there, but that's 5.2 yards per attempt. It was not a pretty day for him.
It was nuts.
Marcel Reed had a few throws, 25 of 39 for 237, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, though, only 6.1 yards per attempt. It was not a good day through the air for Marcel Reed. Neither of these quarterbacks handled that well. So what ended up being the difference in a game where teams are missing field goals left and right, the defenses are just handling business, the quarterbacks look like garbage, Miami was able to run the football.
Man.
That ends up being the difference in this game. And 175 rushing yards for the Canes, 172 of that going for Mark Fletcher, who dude stepped up big time, especially in the second half. But I thought early in the game, there were a few runs to Fletcher that were hitting and, not popping for big carries, but they're getting 4, 5, 6 yards. And I was like, I think if Miami were to lean on that a little bit more, they'd probably have a little bit more success, but they kind of kept getting away from it and trying to put the game on Carson Beck's shoulders. And he wasn't handling it. Once they really just started giving it to Fletcher, I think Miami started handling the game a little bit better. And he had a really nice performance. The other side of the ball, A&M could not run the football whatsoever.
No.
I mean, you look, Marcel Reed, he had a few scrambles early. He did a good job of extending plays with his legs, but on designed runs did not have a lot of success. Ruben Owens, 7 carries for 21 yards. Le'Veon Moss, who obviously got injured in this game again, which is just tough for him, 7 for 15. E.J. Smith, 4 for 14. They finished the game with 89 rush yards, and I know that's sack adjusted, but there was no threat. When A&M wanted to just run the football, they couldn't run the football effectively. And for as good as this team has been all year, they are an offense that has to have that run game going. Because if they don't have that run game going, even with the weapons they have in the receiving core, Marcel Reed is a drop-back passer. I don't trust him. Like, if he does not have the benefit of the run game and then can go play action off of it, can hit the RPOs consistently, if it's just Marcel Reed, hey, you got to sit back and work through your reads, I don't think he's great at it. And he was not in this game. Obviously, again, not a high completion percentage, not a high yards per attempt, throws a couple of interceptions.
No.
And once Miami sees that, Miami starts ramping up the pass rush, and they get 7 sacks in this game. Miami's defensive front has been fantastic, and against a good A&M offensive line, they were able to terrorize up front, and I feel like that was the difference. But Miami won the line of scrimmage, and Miami wins the game.
Yep. And getting that clinching interception from Marcel Reed in the fourth quarter, of course, which caused Sean McDonough to thud his puberty voice.
That is the craziest part of this game. That these two teams were so awful offensively all throughout. And then the game on the line, Miami goes a 3-3 game, 6 plays, 86 yards in 2 minutes and 18 seconds to take for a touchdown. And A&M immediately responds for a 10-play, 70-yard drive with them in a minute 20. They're down the field and are set up, and then Reed throws the pick there. Like, that's the wild part of this, is how bad the offenses were the whole game, and yet at the end, they suddenly looked like well-oiled machines.
Jeez. That was so nuts. Like, that's just the thing. But on the bright side, it seems like there's progress, because there's a lot of progress for Texas A&M. They're no longer known as that team that just has great starts and terrible finishes. But they did technically have a terrible finish to their, do we want to say it's a memorable 2025 season? Because, I mean, it's like, it was awesome that they were unbeaten going into rivalry week. But on the other hand, you lost to your biggest rival, Texas, which kept you out of the SEC title game. And you lost to Miami in terrible, terrible, terrible fashion. 2026, maybe that's better, because it seems like it can be. I mean, especially Marcel Reed coming back.
Well, so a couple thoughts on that. And you just reminded me, I didn't talk about what's next for OU when we finish that up. So I need to get back to that. But we'll finish with A&M here and put a wrap on their season. Look, you have to consider it a success. 11-win season for the first time since 2012. I don't know how many 11-win seasons they've had as a program. They haven't had a ton of double-digit win seasons. So I think it's the first time since – it would be the first time, because 2020 was not – I don't think they even played a full 11 games that year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think A&M did because I think A&M had a couple games they canceled. But anyway, so it's the first time in a long time for this program. It's a huge year.
Well, they did have an 11-win season the last time they won a conference title, which was in 1998. Although they lost to Texas that year.
It's just what A&M does.
I think more about their rivalry week losses than I do about winning a conference. Like maybe that's just me, but it's just I think
no, it's a great example of A&M and Texas. That kind of no matter where those programs are at, Texas just kind of finds a way to win that football game, and I hate doing that to them but it's just the reality of it. That look, it's definitely a soiled ending to the season. I don't think you can talk about this year as a disappointment. You still got the big win on the road at Notre Dame, which I know Notre Dame didn't make the playoff, but it ended up being a really nice win.
1939, the last time they won a natty was an 11-win season. And I'm looking at 1992. That was a 12-win season. Wow.
R.C. Slocum, I guess, was the head coach.
Yeah, R.C. Slocum of 1992 and Homer Norton in 1939.
Look, it was a big year. The win over Notre Dame was awesome. The comeback against South Carolina, even though it's a bad Gamecocks team, like that's a crazy game that everybody's going to remember forever. You were hosting a playoff game at home. Like you have to be thrilled with that if you're an A&M fan. And you're right, the program moving in the right direction. Now, I will say for next year, I do think they are kind of losing quite a bit. Like the offensive line, I think it's at least 3 starters up front gone, and there could be another who, if he leaves for the draft early. In the receiving core, is Casey Concepcion going to come back? That's a question there. They're losing their top tight end, although the tight end behind him was perfectly fine. Defensively, Cassius Howell is going to be gone. Deion Hayes also going to be gone. Tyler Onyedem going to be gone. Albert Regis going to be gone. They're losing a lot of pieces on the defense. I think Tyreek Chappell's done. I think Will Lee is done in the secondary. A lot of key pieces off this team gone, and not as many. Something I was going to talk about with Oklahoma, we'll get into a second, because I do think they're losing quite a bit, but there's also a lot of guys coming back who played and were big-time contributors, even as backups. I feel like A&M is sort of, and I could be wrong here, like it's probably somebody who's an A&M fan that's going to point out this completely off base, but I feel like they're losing a lot of key pieces. And this is a question that I thought Cover 3 brought up that was kind of interesting. I mean, do you want Marcel Reed back as your guy? Like, yeah, I think yes. I think the answer is yes. I don't think you would move on, but for as much as is he going to have as good of an offensive line in front of him this year to really protect him? And are you going to have to put his next year? And then how much pressure is going to get put on him to step up as a QB? And look, he could still develop for sure. They're going to have Mario Craver back, so you're going to have that downfield threat. But I think he's got to develop a lot as a passer to feel really good about him moving forward, personally.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're going to need. And I'm looking at the A&M schedule. You know, they've got, I mean, they do have to go back to Baton Rouge on the road for 2026. That's their first road game. They have to go to Missouri and Alabama. They've got to go to Oklahoma. That's a tough road schedule, but their home schedule is basically Arizona State, Kentucky, Arkansas. Arkansas is not in Frank Broyles' time anymore. They're never going to be. Arkansas sucks. You got Tennessee coming to your backyard, and you got Texas coming to your backyard on Black Friday. And, you know, Tennessee is not really good on the road usually.
Yeah, that has been a thing under Heupel, that they've not been a great team on the road. Shout out to Godfather.
What's up, Godfather?
It has been a thing for Heupel. I mean, it's a much tougher schedule next year than they had this year, at least on paper. Like, I mean, this year they kind of avoided everyone up until the Texas game. And like it's going to be a much tougher test next year. I think Elko's a fantastic coach. I know they've been recruiting well. They're going to have a talented team. They're going to be a good football team again. They'll probably have enough core pieces returning to still feel good. But I think I'm going to be really interested to see how do they replace the trenches. That's kind of the two big spots for me. They're going to be losing some pieces up front on both the offensive and defensive lines. How does that look next year? Going to be kind of the big question for me. Circling back to Oklahoma, because we didn't really talk about moving forward for that team. Obviously a fantastic year for them. Year 2 in the SEC to win 10 games, go to the playoff, host a playoff game. Let's keep in mind, like when OU made the move to the SEC, a lot of people just circled the Sooners as they're like it's going to be a much tougher road to hoe for them.
Not as tough for Texas. So what's up, Steve? Not as tough for Texas, Oklahoma as it has been for Arkansas, South Carolina, and Texas A&M.
Sure, but I think there was a lot of talk, especially because of some of the recruiting side of it. Because I think Texas, interestingly enough, even though OU had been so much more successful for Texas for so long, people could look at how Sarkisian was recruiting and kind of see the steady build there and felt like, okay, he's building an SEC program in Austin. Like he's getting Texas to what it should be. They are beefing themselves up to get ready for SEC ball. Whereas Oklahoma, the narrative kind of was they hit the league, like everything that they've been doing, like even if Riley was still the coach, that's not going to be the same program that was dominated the Big 12 for years and years and years. And look, to be fair, year 1 did not go well for them, right? It was a 6-win football team. Now, they had a million injuries. Like they were really banged up offensively, but there were other issues beyond it. They were not a perfect team this year, but Venables has that defense rolling, which, I mean, if you can play elite defense, you're going to always have a chance. If they can finally just hit on a few pieces offensively, which you would never think about saying for Oklahoma, but if they can hit on that, I think they're going to be fine. And again, having a 10-win season where they went on the road to Knoxville and got the win. They went on the road to Tuscaloosa and got the win. I know they lost to Texas. I know they lost at home to Ole Miss, and obviously losing the playoff. But Oklahoma was a team we went into the season talking about how difficult that schedule was going to be and how rough that was going to be for them to get through it. So we have another shout out.
What's up, Daniel?
How rough it was going to be for them to get through the season. Like 8 wins was going to be a great year. To be a 10-win playoff team is fantastic. And I actually think next year there's kind of quite a bit coming back. So, like, you can get Mateer back, which kind of like I talked about with Reed, I'm not a big believer in Mateer. I'm really not. But do you think another year develop? Like, I don't think they'd move on from him. I think
wow.
Marcel Reed and John Mateer are kind of like the same player to me. Like, I just they're good.
Oh man, the Oklahoma Texas A&M game on the week before rivalry week. That's going to be a fun one next year. Like that honestly feels like it's going to be a whoever wins that game gets into the playoffs for that one.
Could be potentially for sure.
That's what it feels like for me personally. I mean, and you're looking at that 2026 schedule. I mean, September is kind of rough. I mean, you have to go to Michigan and you have to go to Georgia. Although, to be fair, Georgia is much harder than Michigan because we don't know who the head coach is as of right now, or as of this video clip on SEC at the Voice of College Football, although there might be a head coach at Michigan by the time this clip is released. Fourth wall break on SEC at the Voice of College Football. But anyway, yeah, going to the big house, going to Athens, that's rough. You never see Georgia losing in Athens, Georgia. But luckily, Oklahoma gets a bit of a reprieve with a bye week for the in preparation for the Red River rivalry on October 10th. That will always be a fun one. I mean, October 17th through November 7th looks easy, but be careful thinking that. It looks easy, but just don't overlook your opponents because you got Kentucky at home. You got Mississippi State on the road. You got to go to Starkville on October 24th. You got to deal with South Carolina. Come to your backyard on Halloween. You got to go to Gainesville in November 7th. And then that last 3-week stretch of the season, Ole Miss is your annual opponent for at least the next 4 years. They're coming over to your house on November 14th. We don't know what version of Ole Miss we're going to get, but we'll see. Texas A&M coming to your backyard for Senior Day. Then on rivalry week, you got to go to Missouri. And that's going to be an interesting stretch to see what happens for the 2026 season for Oklahoma. Do I think this Oklahoma team could get a playoff win under Brent Venables? Certainly. I think they could. Who's it going to be? We don't know.
Well, that's kind of what I was going to get to. Like, I do think the pieces are there. Like, Mateer, he can come back. I think he will. I don't think they're going to move on from him. They need him to take a step forward, but you're going to have him coming back. They're going to bring their top running backs returning, which those guys were not great, but they were young, kind of took steps over the season. In the receiving core, they can get Satania back. Now, they got a lot to replace Elside. You know, Deion Burks is gone. Jaron Connect, the tight end, is going to be gone. Keontez Lewis gone. Javonte Gibson, do you think he can take another step forward? He can come back. But I think they got to go out and add something. They got to add a tight end. They got to add guys in the receiving core, I think, for sure. Offensive line is going to bring a lot of pieces back because they had to play so many young guys this year, and they've had to play a lot of young guys over the past couple seasons. They should have a pretty experienced offensive line next season, so maybe we're talking about the best line that they've had in the past couple of years. So if they can add a couple weapons in the receiving core and the O-line takes a step forward, could be a pretty nice offense. And I do like Arbuckle. I'm an air raid guy, so I like Ben Arbuckle. Like,
who doesn't like the air raid? Like, I love the air raid.
In Arbuckle, I know if you watch him now, they run the football a lot, but he's off the air raid jury. He's tied to the Cliff Kingsbury and all those guys, and Zach Kitley. But so offensively, like, again, find some weapons in the receiving core, and I think you're okay. Defensively, and I was kind of talking about this with A&M. Like, A&M's losing a lot of guys in their defensive front, but after their top guys, I don't really know a ton of what else they have. You look at Oklahoma, like Taylor Wine's coming back. They're able to get Jaden Jackson back. Adoba Warre is able to come back. And then linebacking core. They've got multiple guys back who were disruptive up front. Like Kip Lewis is able to return. In the secondary, I think they were starting a couple younger corners this season, and they're going to have some guys at safety come back. I know they're losing. I think they're nickel. But, like, they have more pieces on defense that have played a lot and have been contributors coming back that I don't think they're going to be as dominant as they were this year, but I think they're going to be a pretty good defense once again. So I think OU's probably at a pretty strong team again in 2026, and they could be not a force, but like they're going to be one of those teams that's, upper echelon in the SEC, and I think definitely could be a playoff contender. So again, it's interesting. Like, there's been so much questions about Venables and OU moving forward. Like, how strong is that program actually going to be? But this was a big season for them, even in the loss, and I think they're going to be good once again next year. One final game to talk about here. We don't have to spend a ton of time talking about this one. Ole Miss rolls over Tulane 41-10. Rebels offense, I think, scored in 3 plays on the first drive, and it was like 7 plays total for their first 2 touchdowns. Came out absolutely locked in. Chambliss, great day for him. Goes 23 of 29 with a touchdown. Also ran for a score, threw for 282. I mean, look, Tulane, there were moments they could have made this interesting. Like, Tulane's first 2 drives, they get down into Ole Miss territory and then throw an interception that didn't have to happen. Second drive, they're in Ole Miss territory, go for a 4th down, hits the receiver in his hands, and he drops it. And then, like, I will say, like, if they had turned those even into field goals, like, Ole Miss had a moment there in the second quarter where they kind of, like, a few drives didn't go their way. This could have been like 17-9 at halftime. And then maybe we're like, okay, if Tulane can do something in the second half, but Tulane not being able to finish drives, like they just didn't have a chance. And Ole Miss, like, they had a little bit of a lull offensively. I know Kawan Lacey goes out with injury, but is able to come back in, which Chambliss went out with injury as well. I mean, overall for the day, though, 497 yards of offense for the Rebels. Handled their business on that side of the ball. 3 of 10 on third down, not great, but, I mean, they were moving the ball pretty much at will, not having a lot of issues there. If there was anything to talk about, I guess, like, projecting forward for the Rebels, I mean, their defense did give up 421 yards, and Tulane was 5 of 13 on third downs. Like, again, Tulane moved the football. Tulane just didn't finish drives. It went 0-4 on 4th down.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I mentioned the interception. Tulane was never going to win this football game, but if there is a takeaway for Ole Miss that's not super positive, it's that even in a game, like, they gave up 10 points. I get that. It was a 31-point win. It was a blowout. It was never close. Probably don't like that Tulane was able to move the football as well as they were. But over a 31-point win and first win of the Pete Golding era, putting all the Lane Kiffin stuff behind him, you're going to
Lane Kiffin's getting paid for that win.
Which is so stupid. I know Ole Miss has no control over that, but LSU, I mean, come on. Come
Man,
on.
it's made me think. Go get Lane Kiffin's agent, even if you don't like him.
Yeah, it's Jimmy Sexton. I mean, guy's going to get you money. He's going to find a
Yeah,
way.
he's slimy, but it's like
It was, I will say, like, for Ole Miss, and we're nitpicking here because it's a game Tulane didn't have a chance. Like, I mean, we got to find something to talk about. If you're Ole Miss, you were happy, though, that you get to have that moment, like a playoff game at home in Oxford with everything that they've gone through over the past month, 2 months, to just be able to go out and roll over an opponent and get the big win. I think it was like 68,000 people there in Oxford. Huge weekend for that city and for that program. To dominate, get an easy win, and Pete Golding gets to start off the right way. Like that, you're going to take that for sure.
oh man. Oh, we know he'll take credit for it, Godfather. It'll be like, because it's like, oh, I led them there. Yeah, but Pete Golden got them to the Natty.
He will tweet about it for sure.
Oh,
Lane's not going to not tweet.
of course, he's a diva.
But yeah, look, Ole Miss offensively, assuming they're healthy, and we got to figure out for sure what the deal is. I think Chambliss is fine. I think Lacey's the one that's being monitored a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like they handled business on offense. There was a little bit of a lull, but I mean, I don't take much away from that. They picked it up in the second half. Defensively, again, I would be a little bit worried. Like if I were to project forward, because now they're going to go to the Sugar Bowl to take on Georgia. And, they already saw this Georgia team have so much success offensively the first time that they played. For Tulane to have put up 420 yards on you, that's probably not great. But look, you got stops. You got stops on fourth down. That is something. But that would be my concern facing Georgia is, one, has Kirby Smart, we've kind of seen this year, like, he's done a great job with the adjustments. I talked about it with Womack earlier. Kirby, it's kind of been the same way that second half of games, his defenses have played so much better. And then also, like, in a rematch, like we saw the way he handled Alabama the first time he saw the Tide versus the second time he saw the Tide. Ole Miss had a ton of success the first time those teams faced in Athens. Like, Ole Miss, first 5 drives result in touchdowns. Or is that the same thing going to happen the second time you're facing Kirby down in New Orleans? You wonder about that. And then what is Ole Miss defensively able to do against the Georgia offense? But, otherwise, I mean, Ole Miss is a good football team, and they handle business in this one. And look, again, big win for that program to get that and be able to move on.
Yeah. Humongous win for the Rebels. I mean, they really needed that win right there. It's like I wonder if the momentum will lead to something bigger. Can we see Ole Miss wash off the Georgia kryptonite in the Sugar Bowl? I mean, we'll go over more of that later on as we get closer to the game. But maybe a Cinderella story could happen in Oxford. Who knows?
They did. I will say, like, they had to win this game and win it big, because if it had been testy, man, the narrative's coming out after, because even in a win, if they win this game, 31-21 or something like that, like the narrative's coming out post Kiffin would have been rough. So for them to get the blowout, that's probably a little bit cathartic, I guess, for Ole Miss fans to be able to get that. Going to be tough against Georgia, but you did see your offense have success the first time. You're going to have to play really strong on that side of the ball, and defensively going to have to find something to be able to handle that Georgia offense a little bit and get enough stops. But should be an interesting game in New Orleans. Yes, that'll also be New Year's Day later on. So obviously, look, we're going to have
Ryan Seacrest when you got a revenge matchup between Ole Miss and Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, Louisiana.
It's a very SEC, like the Sugar Bowl is obviously the SEC's game, and like it's hard to get more SEC than Georgia versus Ole Miss. The number of Peter Millar polos inside the Superdome. What are we setting the over under at?
Oh man, Peter Millar polos. Oh.
Peter Millar polos in the Superdome. I mean, they hold like about 73,000 for football games. So I would set the over under at 65,000.
Yeah,
my over under for how many Peter Millar polos will be there. No, I mean, look, it should be a fun game. And yeah, it's, Georgia back in the Sugar Bowl for when was the last time Georgia was in the Sugar Bowl? It wasn't that long ago.
Last year.
Last year. I'm stupid. Yeah, literally last year, and they lose the game. I was going to go to that game because the tickets got so cheap that I was like, I live an hour away, and I was like, I'm going to go to a playoff game, and it just didn't work out to go. Ole Miss, first time since 2021-22, again, the Baylor game against Baylor.
It's not their first time that they've had a regular season rematch in the Sugar Bowl. The 1959 season where they had a rematch against LSU and won it. Yeah, that's like, man, it's like I believe that's their second time that they're having a regular season rematch in their history of going to the Sugar Bowl for school history.
59, yeah, LSU twice because it was like the Billy Cannon run, I think, is the regular season game, and then Ole Miss wins in the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. So it should be a fun game down in New Orleans. Obviously, look, we'll have real previews for that as we get closer to those games. We'll do plenty to break down those games. Hopefully, have guests on to break down the teams and some of those matchups. Definitely expect a lot of great things.
Love the guests that come on here on SEC at the Voice of College Football. That we can promise you.
Absolutely. But look, hey, Bama gets a big win. Ole Miss handles business. Texas A&M, not great, but a good season. And a good season for OU as well. I think you'll take it for the first round if you're the SEC.
There you go.
Jackson, any closing thoughts?
Just want to ask you, are you ready for January 2nd, 2026, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, we the transfer portal opening.
But
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully Jeff Lebby gets dumped in Mayo.
Oh, man. And then we can bring back the South Park joke.
Lebby confirmed he is not a Mayo guy, but he said he will happily get dumped in Mayo for a win. So
no problem. Just put a little bit of ketchup and just turn it into chicken sauce. Like just there you go.
I'm also not a Mayo guy, so I stand in solidarity with my head coach. Yeah, I would get dumped in Mayo if I was the head coach winning the game. I will not get dumped in the Mayo if Mississippi State wins that game because I mean we're a 5-7 football team playing a bowl game off of APR. I will not be celebrating this game. This is merely Kamario Taylor gets another start. I am excited for that, but that's the extent of what the Mayo Bowl. My excitement for that game. We will obviously we're going to spend so much time breaking down the Mayo Bowl here on this channel. It's going to be priority number one for the next couple of weeks. Like there's no bigger game than Mississippi State playing in the Mayo Bowl against Wake Forest. It's the stuff that you tell your grandchildren about. And everybody dreamed of a matchup.
And the cashiers at Publix about as well.
For sure. Jackson, how would you close this out?
Well, all I could say is you can check us out all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football as Andrew Miller, Josh Baller, Tucker Harlan, and myself bring you the magic all right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football. And the like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss another video whatsoever. And we will see you soon. Stay safe, stay warm. It's cold out. Happy Sunday night, and good night, everybody.
See y'all.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.